September 22, 2024. The Daniel Boone National Forest stretched endless and green beneath the morning fog, its ancient trails holding secrets that had haunted eastern Kentucky for over a decade. Detective Riley Morgan stood at the entrance to the rough trail, the same path where Samantha Chen and Marcus Williams had begun their final hike 11 years earlier. But today was different. Today, she carried an arrest warrant that would devastate the tight-knit community of Whitley County. "We got him," she said into her radio, her voice steady, despite the weight of what was about to unfold. The name on the warrant wasn't some drifter or unknown predator. It was someone who had helped search for the missing hikers, someone who had comforted grieving families, someone who had been hiding a monstrous secret while serving as a pillar of the community. What started as a routine missing persons case in 2013 had just become something that would force an entire county to question everything they thought they knew about trust, safety, and the people they called neighbors. The arrest that morning would reveal how a predator had used their position of authority to commit an unthinkable crime, then spent 11 years inserting themselves into the investigation, manipulating evidence, and maintaining a facade that fooled everyone. Before we dive deeper into this shocking case, take a moment to subscribe and hit the notification bell. These stories deserve to be told, and your support ensures that cold cases like this one continue to receive the attention they deserve. October 14, 2013. The weather forecast had promised a perfect autumn day in the Daniel Boone National Forest. Temperatures in the mid-60s, clear skies, and the trees ablaze with fall colors that drew hikers from across the country to Kentucky's rugged wilderness. For Samantha Chen and Marcus Williams, both 24 and recent graduates from the University of Louisville, it was meant to be a celebration. Marcus had just accepted a position with a tech startup in San Francisco, while Samantha had been offered a spot in Columbia University's graduate journalism program. They had 1 week left in Kentucky before their paths diverged, and they'd chosen to spend it exploring the state's natural beauty. The Daniel Boone National Forest spans over 700,000 acres across 21 Kentucky counties, a vast wilderness of sandstone cliffs, natural arches, and dense forest that can disorient even experienced hikers. In 2013, the forest was experiencing a surge in popularity thanks to social media posts showcasing its dramatic landscapes. Instagram was still relatively new, and young hikers were flocking to photogenic spots like the Red River Gorge and Natural Bridge State Park. But this influx of visitors also meant more people venturing onto challenging trails without proper preparation or awareness of the dangers. Samantha Chen had grown up in Lexington, the daughter of Taiwanese immigrants who had built a successful restaurant business from scratch. At 5'6", with shoulder-length black hair, often pulled back in a practical ponytail, she possessed a quiet intensity that had served her well as editor of the university newspaper. Friends described her as methodical and cautious, always researching thoroughly before any adventure. Her backpack for the hiking trip had been packed 3 days in advance, complete with color-coded stuffed sacks and a laminated checklist. Marcus Williams represented a different kind of energy entirely. Standing 6'1", with an athletic build from 4 years on the university's track team, he approached life with an infectious enthusiasm that drew people to him naturally. Born and raised in Louisville's West End, he was the first in his family to graduate college, an achievement that had made him something of a local hero in his neighborhood. Where Samantha planned, Marcus improvised, but their contrasting styles had created a balanced friendship that had endured since freshman orientation. They had hiked together numerous times over their 4 years at university, gradually tackling more challenging trails as their skills and confidence grew. The rough trail, their chosen route for this October trip, was ambitious but within their capabilities. The 9-mile loop was rated as difficult, featuring steep climbs, narrow ridgelines, and spectacular views of the Red River Gorge. They'd attempted it once before in spring, but had been forced to turn back due to unexpected storms. On the morning of October 14th, they arrived at the trailhead parking area at 8:47 a.m., captured on a trail camera that the Forest Service had installed to monitor usage. The footage, grainy but clear enough for identification, showed them checking their packs, stretching, and taking a selfie at the trail marker. Samantha wore dark blue hiking pants and a red Columbia jacket. Marcus had on khaki shorts despite the cool morning and a University of Louisville Cardinals hoodie. Both carried substantial backpacks, suggesting they were well prepared for the challenging day hike ahead. They signed the trail register at 8:52 a.m., Samantha's neat handwriting listing their intended route and expected return time of 6:00 p.m. Marcus added a smiley face next to his signature, a detail that would later haunt those who searched for them. The register showed 14 other hikers had already entered the trail that morning, typical for a beautiful October Sunday. The last confirmed sighting of Samantha and Marcus came at approximately 10:15 a.m. A group of 3 hikers from Ohio, heading in the opposite direction, encountered them near the 1-mile marker. The couple seemed in good spirits, according to the witnesses' later statements. Marcus was taking photos of Samantha posed on a distinctive rock formation, while she laughed at something he'd said. They exchanged brief pleasantries about the weather and trail conditions before continuing in opposite directions. What happened over the next 8 hours remains partially shrouded in mystery, though the 20/24 arrest would finally provide the terrible answers that had eluded investigators for over a decade. What we know is that Samantha and Marcus never completed the loop trail. They never returned to their car. They never made it to their dinner reservation at a Lexington restaurant that evening. They simply vanished into the wilderness, leaving behind only questions and a community that would never be quite the same. Where are you watching from today? It's stories like this that remind us how quickly an ordinary day can transform into tragedy. Drop your location in the comments and let me know if you've ever hiked in areas that felt remote enough to make you nervous. The alarm wasn't raised until 9:30 p.m. that evening. Samantha's roommate, Jennifer Park, had expected her back by 7 for their planned movie night. When calls to Samantha's cell phone went straight to voicemail, Jennifer initially assumed they'd simply lost track of time or decided to grab dinner on the trail. But as the hours passed with no word, concern transformed into worry. She called Marcus's roommate, who reported that Marcus hadn't returned either. By 10 p.m., both sets of roommates had driven to the trailhead parking area, finding Samantha's blue Honda Civic sitting alone in the now empty lot, covered in fallen leaves. The initial response from authorities was measured. The Whitley County Sheriff's Department dealt with lost hikers regularly, most of whom were found within hours, embarrassed but unharmed. Deputy Wayne Garrison, who took the initial report, assured the roommates that it wasn't uncommon for hikers to underestimate trail difficulty and end up spending an unplanned night in the forest. But he agreed to initiate a preliminary search given the dropping temperatures and the fact that neither hiker was answering their phone. The first search teams entered the trail at 11:45 p.m., equipped with powerful flashlights and emergency supplies. They followed the standard protocol of making noise, calling out the hikers' names, and checking common rest spots where tired hikers might stop. The teams reached the midpoint of the loop trail by 2 a.m. without finding any sign of Samantha or Marcus. No dropped equipment, no response to their calls, nothing to indicate the pair had even made it that far. As dawn broke on October 15th, the search escalated dramatically. The Whitley County Search and Rescue Team was joined by volunteers from surrounding counties, Forest Service personnel, and a K-9 unit from Lexington. The beautiful weather that had attracted hikers the previous day held, providing ideal search conditions. By noon, over 80 people were systematically combing the trail and surrounding areas. It was a volunteer searcher who made the first significant discovery. Brett Coleman, a local teacher who often hiked the rough trail, noticed something off about a section of the trail approximately 3 miles from the starting point. The path appeared disturbed, with broken branches and scuff marks suggesting someone had left the main trail. Following these signs about 50 yards into the dense undergrowth, Coleman found a red bandana caught on a thorny bush. He immediately called for the search coordinators. The bandana was quickly identified as belonging to Samantha. Her roommate recognized it from photos taken earlier in their trip. This discovery shifted the search focus to the area surrounding the 3-mile marker. Teams spread out in a grid pattern, methodically searching every ravine, rock formation, and potential shelter. The K-9 units picked up a scent trail that led further off the main path, but it seemed to circle back and disappear near a small creek that crossed the area. The second day of searching brought unwelcome complications. A cold front moved through, bringing steady rain that washed away potential tracks and made the steep terrain treacherous. The search had to be temporarily suspended when lightning strikes posed a danger to the teams. During this pause, investigators began exploring other possibilities. Had Samantha and Marcus deliberately disappeared? Were they in financial trouble, having relationship issues? But interviews with friends and family painted a picture of 2 young people with bright futures and no reason to vanish voluntarily. Marcus's parents, David and Marie Williams, arrived from Louisville on the second day, joining Samantha's parents, who had driven from Lexington immediately upon hearing the news. The 4 parents established a makeshift command center at a local motel, coordinating with authorities and pleading for public assistance. Please, if anyone saw anything, no matter how insignificant it might seem, contact the authorities, Marie Williams said at an impromptu press conference, her voice breaking. These kids have their whole lives ahead of them. On October 17th, 3 days after the disappearance, a significant but puzzling piece of evidence emerged. A hiker on a different trail, approximately 2 miles from where Samantha and Marcus had vanished, discovered a cell phone wedged between 2 rocks near a cliff edge. The phone, protected by a heavy-duty case, belonged to Marcus. The battery was dead, but when charged, it showed missed calls from concerned friends and family. The last photo taken was time-stamped at 2:34 p.m. on October 14th, showing Samantha smiling at the camera with the forest canopy behind her. Nothing in the image suggested distress or danger. The phone's discovery raised more questions than answers. The location was far from any established trail, in an area that required technical climbing skills to access. Neither Samantha nor Marcus were known to have such skills. Moreover, the phone appeared to have been deliberately placed rather than dropped or lost. Investigators began to consider the possibility that someone else was involved in the hiker's disappearance. The official search continued for 2 weeks, covering over 50 square miles of some of Kentucky's most challenging terrain. Cave systems were explored, cliff bases were examined, and the Red River was searched by dive teams. Advanced technology was deployed, including heat-sensing drones and ground-penetrating radar in areas where the terrain allowed. Despite these exhaustive efforts, no additional trace of Samantha Chen or Marcus Williams was found. On October 28, 2013, the active search was officially suspended, though the case remained open. Sheriff Thomas Bryant held a press conference acknowledging the difficult decision. "We've covered every inch of searchable terrain multiple times," he said, visibly frustrated. "We're not giving up, but we're transitioning from an active search to an ongoing investigation. We will continue to follow up on any leads or new information." The suspension of the search marked a turning point for the families and the community. Without bodies to bury or answers to provide closure, they were left in an agonizing limbo. Samantha's parents offered a $50,000 reward for information leading to their daughter's whereabouts. Marcus's family organized volunteer searches every weekend for the next 6 months, refusing to accept that the forest had simply swallowed their son. If this story is resonating with you, please take a moment to like this video and share it. Every share helps ensure that cases like Samantha and Marcus's continue to receive attention, even years after the headlines have faded. The disappearance of Samantha Chen and Marcus Williams left a lasting scar on Whitley County and the broader eastern Kentucky community. In a region where outdoor recreation was both economic lifeline and cultural identity, the case forced a reckoning with the inherent dangers of the wilderness that surrounded them. Local hiking groups implemented buddy system requirements. The Forest Service increased trail camera installations and improved cell phone coverage in popular areas. But perhaps the most significant change was psychological. The mountains that had once felt like a backyard playground now carried an undertone of menace. For the families, the years following 2013 were defined by a relentless pursuit of answers. David and Marie Williams relocated from Louisville to Williamsburg, the Whitley County seat, to be closer to the search area and maintain pressure on investigators. David took early retirement from his job as a postal supervisor, dedicating himself full-time to finding his son. He became a fixture at the sheriff's office, arriving every Monday morning to check on any new developments, review any new tips, no matter how far-fetched. The Williams family's new life revolved entirely around Marcus's absence. Their small apartment was converted into an investigation center, with maps covering every wall, marked with search areas, theory notes, and potential sighting locations. Marie started a blog called Finding Marcus and Samantha, which became a gathering place for other families of missing persons. She posted daily, sometimes just a few sentences about the weather or a memory of Marcus, other times lengthy analyses of search strategies or interviews with experts on wilderness disappearances. The Chen family took a different approach to their grief. Henry and Linda Chen threw themselves into establishing the Samantha Chen Memorial Scholarship at the University of Louisville's Journalism School. They attended every graduation ceremony, presenting the award to a student who embodied their daughter's dedication to truth and storytelling. But behind this public face of purposeful remembrance, the family was quietly fracturing. Samantha's younger brother, Kevin, later admitted in a 2020 interview that his parents never spoke about Samantha at home, maintaining her room exactly as she'd left it, but never entering it. The case attracted attention from amateur investigators and true crime enthusiasts, particularly after it was featured on several podcasts in 2015. Online forums dissected every detail, proposing theories ranging from accidental falls to serial killers to supernatural explanations involving the area's Cherokee legends. Some of these amateur detectives traveled to Kentucky to conduct their own searches, occasionally causing friction with local authorities who worried about contamination of potential evidence sites. In 2016, a potential breakthrough emerged when a hunting party discovered human remains in a remote section of the forest, approximately 7 miles from the rough trail. The discovery sparked brief hope that the mystery might finally be solved, but DNA testing revealed the remains belonged to a hiker who had disappeared in 1998, providing closure to another family, but deepening the frustration for those connected to Samantha and Marcus. The investigation saw periodic renewals of interest. In 2018, the 5-year anniversary brought renewed media coverage and a fresh influx of tips. A psychic from California claimed to know the exact location of the bodies, leading a group of volunteers on a fruitless 3-day search that ended in 2 participants requiring rescue themselves after becoming lost. A retired FBI agent reviewed the case pro bono, developing a new profile that suggested the pair might have witnessed illegal activity, possibly related to marijuana-growing operations known to exist in remote forest areas. Each false lead, each dashed hope, took its toll on the families and investigators. Deputy Wayne Garrison, who had taken that first missing persons report, developed insomnia and eventually took early retirement, haunted by what he saw as his failure to bring the young hikers home. You tell yourself you did everything right, followed every protocol, he said in a 2019 interview. But when you drive past that trailhead twice a day, you can't help but wonder what you missed. The community, too, struggled with the unresolved case. Local businesses that depended on hiking tourism saw a 30% drop in visitors in the year following the disappearance. The annual Rough Trail Challenge, a popular ultramarathon, was permanently canceled. Some residents reported avoiding the forest entirely, while others became hypervigilant, reporting every slightly unusual observation to authorities, overwhelming the sheriff's department with false alarms. What time is it where you're watching? Day or night? Somewhere, a family is waiting for answers about their missing loved one. It's cases like this that remind us how a single day can stretch into years of uncertainty. The transformation of the case from active search to cold case was gradual but inevitable. By 2020, 7 years after the disappearance, the file had been relegated to a single detective's quarterly review. Tips still came in sporadically, usually around the anniversary date, but most were variations on theories that had already been investigated. The trail cameras that had been installed with such hope showed nothing but the normal parade of hikers and wildlife. The case seemed destined to join the ranks of unsolved mysteries that haunt America's wilderness areas. But cold cases have a way of surprising everyone. Sometimes it's advancing technology that provides the key. Sometimes it's a witness finally ready to speak. In the case of Samantha Chen and Marcus Williams, it would be a combination of both, plus a detail so small it had been overlooked for 11 years. In March 2024, the Kentucky State Police announced they were reviewing several cold cases using new investigative techniques, including advanced DNA analysis and satellite imagery review. The Chen-Williams case was included in this review, though officials cautioned families against expecting miracles. The initial re-examination seemed to confirm what everyone feared. Without bodies or crime scenes, there was simply nothing to analyze with new technology. But Detective Riley Morgan, newly assigned to cold cases after a distinguished career in homicide, noticed something in the original case files that sparked her interest. In the dozens of interviews conducted during the initial investigation, one name appeared peripherally, but repeatedly. Thomas Garrett, a Whitley County Sheriff's deputy, who had participated in the search and subsequently helped coordinate volunteer efforts. Garrett, now 45, had been with the Sheriff's Department since 2008. He was well liked, known for his dedication to community policing and his volunteer work with local youth groups. He'd been instrumental in organizing annual memorial hikes for Samantha and Marcus, always placing flowers at the trailhead on the anniversary of their disappearance. To everyone in Whitley County, Tom Garrett was one of the good ones, a cop who genuinely cared about the community he served. But Morgan noticed patterns that others had missed. Garrett had been off-duty the day Samantha and Marcus disappeared, but he'd shown up to help with the search remarkably quickly. He'd volunteered to search specific sectors that, in retrospect, seemed strategically chosen to avoid the most likely areas where the hikers might have gone off trail. Most tellingly, he'd been the one to log several pieces of evidence, including the cell phone, and there were discrepancies in his reports about exactly when and where certain items were found. Morgan began a quiet investigation into Garrett's background and activities. What she discovered was a carefully constructed facade hiding a deeply disturbing reality. Phone records from 2013, subpoenaed under a new warrant, showed Garrett's personal cell phone had been in the forest on October 14th, despite his claim of spending the day at home. Financial records revealed he'd made large cash deposits in the weeks following the disappearance, which he'd explained as gambling winnings but couldn't document. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. In August 2024, a woman named Ashley Meadows contacted the Sheriff's Department. She'd been in an abusive relationship with Garrett from 2011 to 2013, ending just months before Samantha and Marcus disappeared. She'd never come forward before, fearful of retaliation from a law enforcement officer, but recent therapy had given her the courage to speak out. What she revealed painted a picture of a man with a violent obsession with control and a particular fantasy about hunting humans in the wilderness. He used to talk about how easy it would be to make someone disappear in the forest, Meadows told investigators, her recorded statement chilling in its implications. He knew every trail, every cave, every place a body could be hidden. He said even cadaver dogs couldn't search everywhere, and he knew exactly where those places were. Armed with this information, Morgan obtained a warrant to search Garrett's property. What they found in a locked storage unit on his rural property provided the evidence they'd been seeking for 11 years. Personal items belonging to both Samantha and Marcus, including Samantha's distinctive turquoise bracelet and Marcus's University of Louisville class ring. Detailed maps marking locations in the Daniel Boone National Forest that had never been searched. And most damning, a journal containing entries that described, in coded language, the stalking and murder of 2 hikers matching Samantha and Marcus's descriptions. The arrest of Thomas Garrett on September 22, 2024, sent shockwaves through Whitley County that are still reverberating. Here was a man who had comforted the grieving families, who had stood beside them at memorial services, who had promised to never give up searching for answers. The betrayal felt by the community was profound and personal. This wasn't just a killer who had escaped justice. This was someone who had weaponized their position of trust to commit murder and then spent 11 years playing the role of dedicated public servant. The details that emerged during the investigation were horrifying. Garrett had apparently encountered Samantha and Marcus by chance while off-duty hiking on October 14, 2013. Something about the young couple had triggered his violent fantasies. Using his knowledge of the forest and his physical conditioning from law enforcement training, he had stalked them off the main trail. The murders had been opportunistic, but planned in the sense that Garrett had long fantasized about such an act and was prepared when the opportunity arose. After killing them, Garrett had used his intimate knowledge of the forest's geography to hide their bodies in a location he knew would never be searched, a natural cave system accessible only through an underwater entrance in a remote pond. He'd then returned to the trail to plant false evidence, including Marcus's phone, in locations designed to mislead search efforts. His position in the sheriff's department allowed him to monitor and subtly misdirect the investigation for years. The community's reaction to Garrett's arrest was immediate and visceral. Within hours of the news breaking, crowds gathered outside the sheriff's department demanding answers. How had he passed psychological evaluations? How many other cases had he potentially compromised? Were there other victims? Sheriff Bryant, who had worked alongside Garrett for years, appeared visibly shaken at the press conference announcing the arrest. "This is a betrayal of everything law enforcement stands for," he said. "We are cooperating fully with state and federal investigators to understand how this happened and ensure it never happens again." For the families of Samantha Chen and Marcus Williams, the arrest brought a complex mixture of relief and renewed anguish. After 11 years of not knowing, they finally had answers, but those answers were almost worse than the uncertainty. Learning that their children's killer had been among those supposedly searching for them, that he had attended memorial services and looked them in the eye while offering condolences, was a cruelty that compounded their original loss. "He stole not just our children, but 11 years of our lives," Henry Chen said at a press conference following the arrest. "Every day we wondered if they were out there somewhere, suffering, needing help. Now we know they've been gone all this time, and their killer was hiding in plain sight, pretending to care." The Williams family was equally devastated, but expressed gratitude to Detective Morgan for never giving up. "Marcus believed in justice," David Williams said through tears. "It took longer than it should have, but justice is finally coming. The search for Samantha and Marcus's remains began immediately after Garrett's arrest. Using information from his journal and maps, dive teams located the underwater cave system he'd described. On September 28, 2024, the remains of both hikers were recovered. They were found together, positioned in a way that suggested Garrett had taken time to arrange the scene, a detail that speaks to his cold calculation and the premeditated nature of his actions, even if the initial encounter was opportunistic. The recovery allowed the families to finally hold proper funerals. Samantha's service was held in Lexington, attended by hundreds, including many of her former journalism classmates who had gone on to successful media careers. They established an investigative journalism fund in her name, dedicated to uncovering truth and seeking justice. Marcus's service in Louisville drew an equally large crowd, with his high school track team serving as pallbearers and his tech colleagues creating a scholarship for underprivileged students interested in computer science. If you're finding this case as shocking as I am, please subscribe and hit the notification bell. Cases like this remind us that justice can come even after many years, but only if we keep these stories alive and continue pushing for answers. The legal proceedings against Thomas Garrett moved swiftly. Charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder, he initially pleaded not guilty, but when confronted with the overwhelming physical evidence and the prospect of federal charges related to his abuse of law enforcement position, he changed his plea to guilty in exchange for life without parole instead of facing the death penalty. During his allocution, Garrett showed no remorse, describing the murders in clinical detail that horrified even veteran prosecutors. He admitted to visiting the hiding spot multiple times over the years, what he called checking on them, a detail that illustrated the depth of his depravity. He also confessed to deliberately misdirecting the investigation, using his position to ensure certain areas were never searched and evidence was mishandled. The revelation of Garrett's crimes prompted a comprehensive review of all cases he'd worked on during his 16-year career. While no other murders were linked to him, several assault cases were discovered to have been improperly investigated or dismissed when Garrett was involved, particularly those involving young women reporting stalking or harassment. 3 cases were reopened, and settlements were reached with victims whose complaints hadn't been properly investigated. The institutional failures that allowed Garrett to operate undetected became the subject of state and federal investigations. The Kentucky State Police implemented new protocols for cold case reviews, including mandatory cross-checking of all personnel who participated in original investigations. Psychological evaluations for law enforcement were enhanced, and new systems were put in place to identify patterns of suspicious behavior among officers. For Whitley County, the aftermath of Garrett's arrest necessitated a complete rebuild of trust between law enforcement and the community. Town halls were held where residents could express their anger and fear. The Sheriff's Department underwent a complete leadership change, with Sheriff Bryant retiring and a reform-minded successor implementing transparency measures, including body cameras for all officers and citizen oversight committees. The case has become a cautionary tale in law enforcement training nationwide. How someone with violent fantasies could not only become a police officer, but use that position to commit and conceal murder has forced a reckoning with hiring practices, ongoing psychological assessment, and the danger of the thin blue line mentality that might prevent officers from reporting concerning behavior in colleagues. The Daniel Boone National Forest has slowly begun to recover its reputation as a destination for outdoor enthusiasts. New safety measures have been implemented, including improved trail marking, emergency communication stations, and regular ranger patrols. The Rough Trail, closed since Garrett's arrest, reopened in November 2024 with a memorial plaque for Samantha and Marcus at the trailhead. A documentary crew has been following the case since the arrest, interviewing family members, community residents, and law enforcement officials. The resulting film, scheduled for release in 2025, aims to examine not just the crime itself, but the systemic failures that allowed it to occur and remain unsolved for so long. The case has also sparked renewed interest in other unsolved disappearances in national forests and wilderness areas. Families of missing hikers have formed a coalition pushing for better resources for searches and investigations in remote areas. They've successfully lobbied for federal legislation that would standardize search and rescue protocols and provide funding for advanced technology like satellite tracking and improved DNA databases. For Detective Riley Morgan, solving the Chen Williams case has been both a career highlight and a sobering reminder of how predators can hide behind badges and uniforms. She continues to work cold cases, applying the lessons learned from this investigation. The hardest part wasn't finding the evidence, she reflected in a recent interview. It was accepting that we needed to look at one of our own. That psychological barrier is real, and it's dangerous. The families of Samantha Chen and Marcus Williams have found different ways to move forward. The Chens have returned to Lexington, where they've reopened their restaurant with a new purpose. Profits support missing persons investigations. A corner table remains permanently reserved with photos of Samantha, a reminder of their loss, but also their determination to help other families find answers. The Williams family has established a foundation focused on improving safety for hikers, particularly in promoting buddy systems and emergency preparedness. They work with outdoor recreation companies to develop better tracking technology and sponsor free wilderness survival courses for young adults. "We can't bring Marcus back," Marie Williams said, "but maybe we can prevent another family from experiencing what we've endured." What cold case in your area deserves more attention? Share in the comments below. Every unsolved case represents a family still searching for answers, a community still wounded by uncertainty. The arrest of Thomas Garrett and the resolution of the Chen Williams case serves as both a conclusion and a beginning. It closed one chapter of suffering for two families while opening difficult questions about trust, authority, and the systems we rely on for justice. It reminded us that monsters don't always lurk in shadows. Sometimes they wear uniforms and smile at community gatherings. The story of Samantha Chen and Marcus Williams isn't just about their tragic deaths or their killer's eventual capture. It's about the persistence of love in the face of loss, the power of determination over time, and the importance of never giving up on justice, no matter how cold the case becomes. It's about communities confronting uncomfortable truths and choosing to rebuild rather than remain in denial. As the sun sets over the Daniel Boone National Forest, hikers still traverse the rough trail, many pausing at the memorial that marks where two young people with bright futures began their final journey. The forest has reclaimed much of the area where they died, nature indifferent to human tragedy, and triumph alike. But in the communities of eastern Kentucky, in the halls of justice, and in the hearts of two families who never gave up, the impact of this case will resonate for generations. The legacy of Samantha Chen and Marcus Williams lives on not just in scholarships and foundations, but in every improved protocol, every enhanced safety measure, and every cold case detective who refuses to accept that some mysteries must remain unsolved. Their story reminds us that justice delayed is not always justice denied, that truth has a way of surfacing even from the darkest depths, and that sometimes the most dangerous predators are those we trust the most. Make sure you're subscribed and have notifications turned on for more true crime deep dives. Share this video with someone who appreciates stories of justice finally served, no matter how long it takes. Because every cold case deserves its day of resolution. Every family deserves answers, and every community deserves the truth, no matter how painful it might be.